you, I think you're about to make off without payment. And if I don't arrest you, then you will make off without payment. So there's my grounds.
Well, I'm offering to make
Can you
payment.
come out of the car, please?
Yeah,
Welcome to UK Cops Review, the channel where we shine a light on questionable conduct, break down police and legal stories, and speak up for fairness and accountability. Each case we cover is meant to inform, educate, and remind viewers why rights and transparency matter. Today's story comes to us through the work of well-known Auditor Brett Chamberlain. You'll find a link to his channel below. Make sure to check it out, show your support, and give him the recognition he deserves for bringing this case forward. In this report, Brett visits a Tesco petrol station where things quickly take an unusual turn. Staff contact police, claiming he is refusing to pay. But here's the truth. Brett is actually attempting to pay with a £100 Royal Mint commemorative coin, which is officially recognised as legal tender. Despite the law being clear, confusion soon escalates. A police sergeant arrives at the scene and is informed about the validity of the payment. Instead of resolving the matter fairly, he sides with the store, disregards the law, and proceeds to arrest Brett on false grounds. What should have been a simple transaction turns into an avoidable misuse of authority. Brett doesn't stop there. He takes his case to court, determined to prove his rights were violated. The outcome changes everything. Brett secures a significant settlement, while the sergeant is left to face serious legal and professional consequences for his actions. This case is a strong reminder of why accountability matters, not only for the public but also for those who wear the uniform and are expected to uphold the law.
Going to happen. Okay, so you've done your bit checking on legislation, I've just checked on my legislation. As I said to you, the shop does not have to accept it just because it is legal tender. You said it's legal tender, you are correct, however it is a commemorative coin. On the internet they're worth about 20 quid.
Well,
right, so here is what is going to happen. Either you are going to pay for your fuel correctly, or you are going to fill out their civil recovery form so that you can arrange to make payment at a later date, or I'm going to arrest you for bilking.
What's bilking?
Bilking, making off without payment. You've got to the point where payment is due, you're now refusing to make payment, therefore I will treat it as a criminal offence. So how would you wish to proceed at this point?
Well, I have got means to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not going to fill out a civil recovery form as you put it.
Right, so what's the means that
what
you're
was the option 2?
So option 1 is either you pay, option 2 is you fill out the form, option 3 is that you get arrested.
Well, pay.
No, you pay with legal tender that they will accept.
That is legal tender.
No, they don't have,
But if this is a £50 note and he said, oh look, we don't accept £50 notes because there's lots of forgeries.
Exactly.
Would you be doing exactly the same thing now?
Yes. So if you go into a corner shop and try and pay for a penny chew with a £50 note, they are perfectly within their rights to refuse that sale.
This is the moment where the sergeant's credibility takes a sharp hit. When Brett points out that the coin clearly carries a legal face value of £100, the sergeant dismisses it outright, insisting it is just a commemorative coin. That interpretation is simply not supported by law. A coin produced by the Royal Mint and stamped with an official face value is legally recognised as tender. Its legitimacy doesn't depend on whether it's commonly used at the checkout or displayed in a collection. The status comes directly from legislation, not from a store manager's preference or an officer's personal opinion. Why denying the coin's value, the sergeant revealed a clear gap in his understanding of currency law. Commemorative or not, the £100 piece carries the full weight of the Crown and the Treasury. In practical terms, that means it is a lawful means of payment for any debt, and refusing it undermines the very foundation of what legal tender represents.
It's different because...
No, it's not different.
No, it is.
You have offered a form of payment that they will not accept. The principle is exactly the same.
Well, if you arrest me, it'll be a wrongful arrest.
Yeah? It's not. It's a lawful arrest because I've explained the situation and I've explained that I believe you're doing this for
Are you a
dishonest
sergeant
reason.
or an officer?
I am a sergeant.
Right.
Okay, so my point is also that coin is not worth the face value of it. It's not legal tender in such a way that this shop has to accept it as being valued at £100.
Okay, so it has. Hang on.
Short of the mark.
No, I'm not. So it is got a face value of £100. So it is worth £100.
It's not.
Well, you say that, but the Bank of England, the House of Commons, the state. All the institutions that came before you say it is, right? But you say it isn't, right? Now you say it's only worth whatever you say it was. Interestingly, I don't know if you've looked at the price of silver, but that's probably worth about £48 in silver. Hang on, I haven't finished yet. So that's £48 in silver.
Yeah.
Whereas, how much is a £20 note or a £50 note worth in plastic? What, a penny or two?
Here's where the situation gets even more concerning. The sergeant himself admits that he has encountered this exact scenario before. Yet, when asked what happened the last time, he cannot provide an answer, not even a vague outcome. That silence speaks volumes. It shows he hasn't learned from past experience and continues to fall back on the same forceful approach without gaining any real understanding. What makes matters worse is his unwillingness to verify the facts in front of him. When challenged to check the law or the previous outcome, he dismisses the request, saying he doesn't have the time to look into it. Strangely, only moments later, he boasts that he does have time to carry out an arrest and go through the lengthy process of writing up the paperwork that follows. That contradiction exposes where his priorities really lie. This isn't professional policing, it's personal pride. An arrest should always be the final step, supported by clear evidence and lawful reasoning. But in this case, the evidence was right in front of him. The auditor never left the station, he clearly attempted to pay, and he was holding a valid form of currency. Instead of recognizing those facts, the sergeant chose to escalate, and in doing so, he crossed the line from duty into ego-driven decision-making.
Do you want to check to make sure it's not an unlawful arrest?
Another unit, please. This chap's about to be arrested.
Would it be unlawful arrest?
Well, it's not a wrongful arrest.
It would be a wrongful arrest. Well, how can you arrest somebody for refusing to pay when they're offering to pay with a coin of the realm?
Because you're not offering to pay with payment that they can accept or will accept or have to accept. No.
Now, interestingly, you said that you've done some research on this and I've done this before.
Yeah.
Well, what was the outcome of it last time?
It was no further action.
Why was that then?
I don't know.
Well, how come you've got a record of that?
I'm about to let you drive off from here.
Well, how come you got a record that I did it last time, but you haven't got a record of the outcome?
Why? Because I haven't got time to look at that right now.
But you have got time to arrest me and deal with all the paperwork that'll be involved in that.
Yep.
So that's just abusing your power, I think, because what you're trying to do is
you're power proportionally. These people here are trying to run a business, and you are making life extremely difficult by being obstructive in how you're going to pay.
No, I'm not.
The sergeant's attempt to frame the auditor as if he were pulling some sort of trick simply doesn't hold water. A fast one would mean slipping away without paying or trying to avoid the bill altogether. But that is not what happened here. The auditor stood openly at the counter, holding out a £100 coin recognised by the Royal Mint, and made every effort to settle the payment in full view of staff and police. The accusation crumbles once you remember the key facts. He never left the forecourt, never tried to hide his intentions, and never avoided responsibility. His payment method was clear and lawful, yet it was dismissed out of hand. Then the sergeant insisted he should just pay by another method. The auditor's response went right to the heart of the issue. It wasn't about convenience, it was about principle. Why should someone be forced to use a different form of payment simply because a store or an officer doesn't personally like the method chosen? The law states the coin is valid currency. That should end the matter. If retailers can turn away legal tender and police support that refusal with threats of arrest, then we no longer have law deciding what counts as money. Instead, it becomes a question of individual preference and arbitrary judgment, something that undermines both fairness and the authority of the legal system itself.
I'm only here to enforce the law, I'm not here to decide. I just suspect that an offence has taken place, okay? So I'm not convicting you, and you're refusing, to cooperate with me any further. You're refusing to resolve this situation by giving these people your details. So therefore,
No, don't, because what you're trying to encourage me to do is not to give them my details, but to fill out a legally binding form. You're actually encouraging me to fill out a legally binding form, right? That would be detrimental to me.
Why? Because you have to pay for your fuel just like everybody else in this petrol station?
No, because you're forcing me not to use cash. It's exactly the same as you...
No, I'm forcing you to provide the legal tender that this business is willing to accept.
But it's not for them to pick and choose.
It is, absolutely.
No, it's not.
If they will only accept payment in Pokemon cards, that is entirely up to them.
Yeah, but they need to state that on the pump. Right, when I take the fuel, they say payment only in Pokemon. I'm not trying to. What do you think? What do you think I'm trying to achieve then out of this?
So why are you not willing to offer any other sort of payment? Do you have bank cards on you?
Maybe it's a matter of principle. This is a coin of the realm. You shouldn't be threatening to arrest me because of their preference as to what type of note or coin they accept. That's ridiculous.
The auditor made his strongest point when he reminded the sergeant of a simple truth: you cannot be prosecuted for failing to pay if you have already offered legal tender. That is the very definition of legal tender. Once it is offered, the debt is considered settled in law, whether the retailer chooses to accept it or not. The charge of making off without payment only applies when someone deliberately leaves without paying with the intent to avoid the bill altogether. That clearly wasn't the case here. Brett remained on the forecourt, coin in hand, openly offering payment. His comparison to Scottish banknotes drove the point home even further. Technically, Scottish notes are not legal tender in England. Yet every day, shops across the country accept them without a second thought. If stores are willing to take money that isn't even classified as legal tender, how can Tesco reject an official £100 coin that is recognised under UK law? This contradiction highlights the weakness of the sergeant's position. The real issue was never about the legitimacy of the coin. It was about the store applying inconsistent rules and the police choosing to support that inconsistency with threats of arrest. What should have been a simple transaction instead became an example of flawed policing and poor judgment.
Not your job, is it, to state what type of coin that Tesco accepts or not?
It's my job to make sure that you don't go past the point of payment without making
Well,
payment.
I haven't driven off, have I? I've got every intention of paying with this coin.
No.
If I had no intention, if I was trying to do something dishonest, I'd driven off, wouldn't I? But the fact is, I've waited here for you to come and I've discussed it with you. I've tried to explain it, being very civil and be rude, have I? In any way, I've got no disrespect for the police whatsoever.
No.
Might go downhill a bit if you arrest me unlawfully.
Okay.
I just think, please, just check that it's a lawful arrest, because I don't think it is.
I believe it is.
And the whole point of cash and legal tender is that you cannot be successfully prosecuted for non-payment if you've offered legal tender. So if I had Scottish notes, right, now they're not legal tender in the UK, they're not legal tender full stop, but Tesco's actually accept those.
The auditor's restaurant analogy cut straight to the heart of the matter, because it reduced a complex legal debate to simple common sense. If you've already eaten the meal, the restaurant can't suddenly decide which forms of lawful payment it will or won't accept. They may refuse a £50 note before serving food, but once the service has been provided, the debt exists, and any legal tender must be accepted. The same principle applies perfectly to this petrol station case. The fuel had already been supplied, the service was complete, and the auditor presented a valid £100 Royal Mint coin as payment. At that point, the transaction should have been over. The sergeant's failure to understand this wasn't just a minor mistake. It was a breakdown of fundamental legal knowledge. The whole purpose of legal tender is to provide certainty. Once it is offered, the debt is discharged, end of story. By ignoring that principle and siding with Tesco's personal preference, the sergeant elevated a civil non-issue into a supposed criminal matter that, in reality, never existed in law.
It's an invitation to take the fuel, and I've taken the fuel, and now I've got a debt, and I'm offering to pay the debt in legal tender. Now in the store, it's different, because I haven't taken the food, have I? In fact, if I'd have eaten the food, I'd be obligated to pay for it, and then it'd be the same scenario, just the same as if you went into a restaurant and had a meal, and then you have to pay afterwards, and you offered to pay in that. Right, they can't lawfully have you prosecuted for failure to pay if you've offered a reasonable means of payment and they've refused to accept it.
Yeah, but you've refused to identify yourself to this person.
Well, I don't need to, do I?
I'm now starting to view your actions as being dishonest.
How
so
have I
therefore
been dishonest?
I suspect an offence is going to
How have I been dishonest?
Because you're refusing to give your information to this gentleman so that...
But he's not entitled to my information, is he?
He is.
Okay, if I told you what my...
because you have a debt to settle up with him.
This is...
So to go to the restaurant scenario, if you ate your meal and then said, oh, I've forgotten my wallet, I've got no means of paying.
Oh, no means of paying.
Yeah, okay. So at that point you're not being dishonest. At the point that you refuse to identify yourself, or you put Mickey Mouse care of Disney World on a piece of paper and say, here's my details, you're then becoming dishonest.
What about if, we went to the restaurant, we had a meal, right, and then I pulled out a £50 note and they said, look, we don't accept £50 notes. They can't make a decision about refusing to accept the £50 notes when you owe them money. They can only refuse to go through with the transaction in the first place. It's only because you've had the goods and you owe a debt that they can't refuse to accept the money.
The sergeant then attempted to bolster his case by quoting guidance from the Bank of England, pointing out that shopkeepers are not legally required to accept legal tender. At first glance, that sounds convincing, and it is true that the Bank of England notes retailers can choose which payment methods they accept. But the key detail the sergeant overlooked is context. That flexibility only applies before a sale takes place. In other words, a shop may refuse certain notes or coins at the point of agreement, but once the goods or services have already been provided, a debt is created. At that moment, offering legal tender is enough to discharge the debt, whether the business likes the form of payment or not. This is exactly the distinction the auditor emphasized. Buying fuel isn't the same as trying to purchase an item off the shelf where a cashier can refuse payment in advance. By the time the petrol was pumped into the tank, the transaction had moved beyond choice. From that point forward, the only question was simple: did the customer present valid legal tender to settle the debt? The answer was yes, and that should have closed the matter.
Right, so these coins are made by the Royal Mint.
Yep, and they are legal tender.
And they are
No
legal
argument
tender.
there.
Yeah. So how can I be refusing to pay and being dishonest in any way when I'm offering to pay with a coin of the realm, a legal
Because
tender
you've
coin?
offered a form of payment that they are unable or unwilling to accept. Therefore, as I said, the onus is on you to find alternative means. You've failed to do that,
Okay.
and you are now proposing to leave here without actually giving any means of identification so they can arrange at a later date to make payment with you.
Okay.
So therefore, because of that, I suspect that you are about to commit an offence of making off without payment.
See, now I reckon that if you've offered to pay, and I've offered to pay lots of times, got it on video, and right, and they refuse to accept the payment, I can't see how that I've committed a crime, even if I don't pay.
To provide an alternative means of payment or come to an alternative agreement.
So what you're suggesting is that you're going to arrest me based on the opinion of a Tesco staff member, whereas another member of staff might have.
Based on my suspicion.
Suspicion.
I'm sure with the amount of time this gentleman has spent here, and the fact that other colleagues are aware of the fact that we have been here for half an hour.
Nah, 16 minutes.
I'm sure if he were able to take that coin, he would have done it by now, because he's got plenty of other things to do. You are costing them money by the fact that your car's sat here taking out these two lanes.
Well, I've offered to move it, but he said no.
If they could...
I offered to move it, but he said no.
But if they were willing to take this at any point, they would have done that.
Now, don't you think, Ben, right, that the country's biggest retailer would have a simple, basic understanding of coins of the realm and the legal tender situation and what they can do and what they can't do?
Well, they clearly do by the fact that they are not obliged to take it just because it's legal tender.
Because he said so. But how do you know he's right? And how do you know that what he's saying is the opinion of Tesco's as a company as a whole?
It's not that he's right, it's that the Bank of England is right, and it's the Bank of England that states that the shopkeepers are not legally obliged to accept any royal tender. Right,
okay, I understand where you're coming from with that, but that's referring to buying something from a store, not for paying a debt.
Okay, it's still the same,
no, it's not.
Same situation.
No,
okay.
It's not.
That's fine.
It's actually on the Bank of England website what legal tender is.
Yeah, it is. As I said, I have no argument with you about that at all.
The sergeant's reasoning for the arrest collapses under its own weight. He admitted outright that the auditor had committed no offence, but claimed he might commit one later. That isn't how the law works. Policing is about facts, not predictions. The update that followed made the situation even clearer. After the arrest, the auditor was taken into custody, questioned, and treated like a criminal, all because Tesco refused a legitimate form of payment. What should have been a simple civil matter was turned into a wrongful arrest. But instead of giving in to intimidation, the auditor stood firm and pursued justice through the courts. The outcome? A £5,000 settlement, an amount that speaks volumes. Authorities don't hand over thousands of pounds unless they recognise the case was mishandled from start to finish. This episode shines a harsh spotlight on how fragile policing becomes when officers abandon the basics of law. The sergeant acted on what ifs, inventing criminal intent that never existed, while ignoring the fact that the £100 coin was legal tender. The real breach was Tesco's refusal, yet the auditor was the one marched off in handcuffs. That is policing turned upside down. What makes it worse is the attitude behind the mistake. The sergeant brushed aside challenges, admitted he had no knowledge of outcomes from previous cases, and still pressed ahead with hours of wasted paperwork and an unnecessary arrest. That's not protecting the public, that's protecting EGOA. In the end, the £5,000 payout became the loudest message of all. It proved the auditor was not only right, but fully vindicated. It also served as a reminder that when officers overstep their authority, the law still has a way of correcting them, sometimes through costly lessons. This case should stand as a wake-up call to every officer. Respect the very laws you are sworn to uphold, or the courts will force that respect upon you, one payout at a time. That wraps up today's report. If you found this case insightful, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to support independent coverage. And be sure to check out Brett Chamberlain's channel, linked in the description below. He deserves full credit for bringing this case to light. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Okay, so I'm arresting you on suspicion of making off without payment. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something on which you later will rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand?
Yep.
Okay, so my intention at this time is to take you to Exeter Police Station, where you will be put into custody. The reason for that is for the prompt and effective investigation of the offence and to confirm your identity and your name and address.
Well, it'll be unlawful arrest, won't it?
No, not at all.
Right, where do you want me to park
I
my car
have the
then?
suspicion that you're about to commit an offence.
Well, what offence am I committing?
I've told you, I think you're about to make off without payment, and if I don't arrest you, then you will make off without payment. So there's my grounds.
Well, I'm offering to make
Can you come
payment.
out of the car, please?
Yeah,
sir?
stop.
Okay.
There's no use to use violence, is there?
No, well, step out of the car,
let me
please.
just get my affairs together, alright?
Okay. Do you want to provide your details, or are you going to go to custody?
Well, I'll provide my details for you.
Yeah, but do you want to provide them to this man here?
No, but you want me to fill out a legal document.
Yeah.
No, I'm not filling out a legal
Okay,
document.
out of the car then, please, sir.